Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live Q&A. Sorry, my light is a little flashy. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you see in the title today, Lauren, Killey, and I are going to be talking about ways to navigate post-show blues, as well as setting yourself up for a successful reverse diet after a competition. Lauren and I just actually came off of our competition season and start these conversations, then, coming right off the stage. So I'm really excited to have Lauren joining us today. If you guys have any questions, hi, Lauren.
Hi.
I was just doing a little introduction to who you are and what we're going to be talking about today. I think, with the type of seasons we've had, this conversation is honestly underrated. And a lot of competitors, if not all of them, go through some level of post-show blues. So I'm really excited for us to delve into, being coaches and competitors, we feel both. So why don't you give our viewers a little introduction to who you are, what you do, and then we'll dive into talking about our conversation today.
Amazing. Well, hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren, WBFF Fitness Pro. I've been competing now for almost 10 years. So I've just done it's my 14th show. Love competing, love everything about it. So turned it into a career as well. So I do focus primarily on competition prep with my coaching clients, but of course do also coach, people with all sorts of goals, whether it be strength goals, body transformation goals, all that sort of stuff. My career started at Clean Health. That's where it all began, which was, it was amazing. It was a great launching pad into where I am today, which is running my own business and kind of coaching clients on a global scale, which is super exciting. And now that the world is opening up again, being able to kind of take teams to shows all around the world, which has always been the goal. When I got into the fitness industry, that was always the goal. So that's sort of a little bit of a background about, I suppose, my career and my competing history. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a great way for us to start our conversation is I'll do the same as well, but give us a little bit of a background on what this competition season looked like for you. Especially with the world opening up, you did do quite a lot this season. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was different because especially here in Australia, we weren't able to travel, we weren't able to leave, we didn't have shows for what was 3 years, so it was a forced break, which was both a really good thing but also a very challenging thing as well, because it forced pretty much everyone here to have a big lengthy progress season. We just had to keep building and growing and making the most of it. So it was nice to give the body a break. For I know a lot of people here, we had a big break from dieting, a big break away from all of that sort of stuff. That being said, because of the ups and downs of COVID, there were shows that were kind of tentatively happening and getting cancelled. So people were actually like in and out of preps kind of as well in that time. So yes, we were forced into a big break from the stage. We didn't quite get to what is that stage condition where, and I'm sure we'll touch into this, we do start to really down regulate and things like that. But for those who were prepping for those shows, I think I had 3 of them cancelled in those 3 years. We were still in and out of diet states. So it's a really funny little thing. So when we finally got to have our shows again, from a mental perspective, it was quite, it was really surreal just to actually have a show again.
Yeah.
And then this year it was the first time I've ever actually been able to get overseas. So I've been trying, I was supposed to do my international debut in LA in 2020. Obviously that show got cancelled. And so competing overseas is a whole other game because you are in another country. After the show, you've got the novelty of being in another country, the food, which is challenging. You're out of routine, you're out of your norm. And again, I'm sure we'll get into this. It makes that post-show experience far more challenging. So for me this year, taking on that plus 2 back-to-back shows, I hit Australia and then the following weekend hit London. So it was 2 peaks, one after the other. And it was challenging. Like when you're in it, you just do it and it's easy. It's like, just get it done. But once the second show was done in London, it was this big wave of like, oh my God, we're done. Like, there's nothing holding me back now. And all of what felt like years and years and years of like practice at the reverse dieting kind of just almost slipped away. I was like, ooh, this is different. This feels weird. This is really challenging. So even those who are coaches and have been doing it for a long time still struggle. Like that post-show experience is hard.
Oh, yeah.
it's really challenging, and I think it's really important for us to be able to share that it's not easy for anyone.
Yeah.
No one finds it easy, you know. We all have our own struggles with it. We just become more aware of our triggers, and we become more aware of how we're going to handle it, and we become more aware of the routine we need to create to make it feel easier. But when you're out of routine, all
Yeah.
of that disappears.
Another thing to note is, with what you were doing, you did 2 back-to-back shows. So your prep was probably a lot longer than you expected, right? Usually when you're
Yeah.
prepping for a show, once the show is done, whatever happened at the show, you're kind of diving into, going into that off-season improvement season. But, diving from one show right into the next, it's kind of like that adrenaline high right after the first show is still staying up there. And for anybody that followed my journey, heck, I was competing all year round. I did 4 and I was literally in prep all of 2022. And so mentally, it's you're super strict with your routine. You feel very, after the second show, it just became so normalized and routine that now it hit me like a brick, where it's like, I might have more than like 20 something plus weeks before I start even considering diving into getting ready for another show. So talk to us a little bit about, what are your foolproof tips when it comes to, all right, you hopped off the stage. Doesn't matter if you placed first, didn't place at all. What is the first thing that goes on through your head, or that you encourage your clients to think about, especially when the emotions are so heavy and high that first days after the stage?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because you're right, the emotions are heavy and high. Like, if you've won it, great, you're ecstatic and you're excited, but if you haven't, that hits you too. You're feeling pretty down, you're feeling disappointed. And as we know, whether we like it or not, humans have an emotional attachment with food. So that's one of the first things we're going to go to. And we're down regulated, we're hungry, our body's been in what is essentially that famine state for months. All it wants to do is eat. So for us with our clients, we try and set them up for success before they even get to show day. So how you come in, we believe, is how you come out, right? So you need to come in a good mentality toward food, so that when you get to that post show, you're like, okay, I'm feeling reasonable, right? So the first thing people do, and this is something that we're, my partner and I, because I coach with my partner, we have conversations about it a lot, is this almost glorification of the post-show binge. And this, like, it's quite big on, I think you'll see it a lot on social media, right? It's this, like, this is what I get to have for my post-show binge, right? This is my hoard of food backstage. And we don't like this for so many reasons, right? But this whole concept of bodybuilding and, like, as soon as I get off the stage, I now get to, like, shove in all the food, right? Kind of comes from old school bodybuilding.
Yeah.
The men who are 100+ kilos, monsters of humans, and let's be honest, also most of them enhanced male bodybuilders.
Yeah.
They can eat and they'll be fine. Like, I'll put it that way. They can go and have whatever they want after the show and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Now, take much smaller female competitors.
Yeah.
Relationships with food are far different to males, and whose physiology is far different to males. We go do that, we are opening a floodgate, and the rest of that reverse is going to be so hard. So what we say is, straight up, don't have a plan for your post-show binge. No post-show binge, right? So it's that you get off the stage, we want balance. You want to be able to do something, of course, but the very first thing we have our clients do is get some sort of electrolytes, whether it be like a sports drink, something like that. Have some electrolytes, have some fruit, because the common reason why so many competitors want to go to town on all the sugars and things like that is they're dehydrated.
Yes.
From their prep protocols, or whether it just be from being under the stage lights and being busy, right? So get some electrolytes into you, get some fruit into you, and a lot of the time, once you've had that, you'll find that the cravings and that desire to, like, go to town and all of the, like, cakes and cookies and things drops, and really all you want is a good meal, and then you want to go to bed.
Exactly.
So, first step. Then second step, plan a meal.
Exactly.
Not a whole lot of junk. Plan a meal where it's portion controlled for you that first day when you are emotionally dysregulated. Make it about connection with family, loved ones. Don't make it just about the food. And then if you want to have a little something, we say choose our thing. ideally get a dessert at the meal where it's also portion control. But, you know, if you cookie, have a cookie. Don't buy things in excess because your family aren't going to eat them. They're
Exactly.
not. You're going to eat them.
That's a common thing, you know, and I didn't do this myself. And people are like, what was your first meal? And honestly, all I was craving was, you know, some meat, veggies, and, you know,
Yes.
a lot of water and a lot of electrolytes. And I think that, you know, yes, it's fun to see, you know, you shredded eating these sweets and treats and pizzas. And it's like, but at the end of the day, uh, we tend to not even enjoy it as much because we're scarfing
Yeah.
it. One of my top tips that I give, you know, even to my friends who are competitors, my clients, and I take to heart myself is after my show, everyone's giving gifts, right? Cookies,
Yeah.
treats, go out to dinner. I honestly, for my mental well-being, and I think this goes for any goal too, set your environment up for success. I
Yeah.
gave a lot of that stuff away. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed one or two of them. I really focus on being present while eating it, not scarfing it down and like, wait, did I just eat? But then give it away if anything, and really set that first 1 to 2 weeks at home if you are able to be at home with the foods that are going to set you up for success with your reverse diet. And we're going to talk about that shortly. But there's no reason to set your environment up with every food that you may have restricted yourself from, because you're going to end up caving into that because of that down regulation. Like right now, I'm not even a full week after my show. I'm constantly hungry. It's just something that I have to accept because of being on prep for so long. I
Yeah.
eat and I'm still very hungry. If
Yeah.
I was in an environment where I had all the cookies and all the things I was craving, yeah, part of me may lose that willpower and cave in and start going and going and going. But my body, especially as women, I'm just going to hold on to all of that. And it's so much harder to lose that when you do something like that. So let's go into talking about, you know, all right, the post 1 or 2 meals after show, we're back home, the feelings are starting to sink in. What does that first week of the quote unquote reverse diet look like, or do you recommend it look like for, you know, athletes?
Yeah. So, like you said, it's about kind of like making things easy for yourself. The way we like to describe it is like, imagine you take an alcoholic, right? And they've just come out of rehab. They've done all this hard work to, you know, separate from the thing that they potentially are going to still have kind of cravings and desires towards. The first thing you do is you take them to a bar and you say, hey, we're going to go to a bar. You just can't have any alcohol. Like, that is what it is like if you come home and buy all sorts of processed foods or like, you know, highly calorie dense foods. Like, there's nothing wrong with any foods. I do want to emphasize
Yes.
that. But they're foods that we aren't necessarily ready to introduce back into our diet yet, simply because, as you said, you're still hungry. Like, and it can, like, I'm 6 weeks post show now, just starting to see the hunger drop. You know, I'm still hungry here and there. Like, I still have what can be that food obsession, that like, what am I having for dinner in a week? You know, like those
Yeah.
kind of thoughts and feelings that do come up in prep. Because it can take time. So it's easing back into balance with food. So what we like to say is think about your post-show diet in the same way as you set yourself up for us, our clients, they tend to start their cuts anywhere from 16 to 20 weeks out, right? So we say go back to that because we have a slower cut into stage. It allows more balance and we follow what is this 80-20 with food. 80% of the time aiming for whole foods, foods that fuel your growth, your health, your recovery. 20% of that might be some fun foods. Now, if you've got foods which we describe them as like trigger foods, you really struggle. Like if you have one piece of chocolate, you're going to eat the whole bar of chocolate. Don't even have one piece, you know, it's going to be too hard. But what you might do is make a big bowl of oatmeal and like melt a little bit of chocolate in that oatmeal. So you've got the balance factor there, but it's not something that you're just going to end up kind of snapping and overeating like crazy. So like I was having like crumpets with some Biscoff as my like little treat for ages because I was like, I love ice cream. I'm a foodie, right? But I'm like, I'm not going to start bringing that in yet because I'll just eat the whole tub, you know? So lots of whole foods, sticking to all of the protocols you would on your prep, whole meals, balanced meals, protein, carb, fat based, 3 full meals a day. Continue to plan your food in advance, spread it out throughout the day as you would in a cut to manage hunger. Because the reality is we've got a lot more calories to play with, but we're still hungry. So
Yeah.
what most people will do is they'll just start to bring in a lot more calorie dense things and they'll
Yes.
be hungrier. Doesn't
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to add to that, you know, really, and it really depends because and it all depends on the individual, how low your calories actually go. Again, like for example, with myself doing back-to-back shows, I never really gave myself a chance for my maintenance to bounce back. So
Yeah.
towards last show, I did, you know, and I accepted it before committing to prep that I might have potentially have to go a little bit more aggressive than I would like. That requires, you know, high expenditure, lower calories for an extended period of time. So going into my reverse, even though I'm accepting putting on a little bit extra body fat just to get my maintenance higher, and I'm okay with that because I want to get out of the hole as fast as I
Yeah.
can. I think to add to that, it's really focus on low calorie, high volume foods because since you like that, you know, habit of eating and actually putting food and feeling full, well, you can do that by having, you know, high volume veg, making sure you're focusing on your protein. And yeah, sure, you know, your next show could be so far away and maybe not craving more salads and this and veg protein, but just know that that's going to set you up for success for your next show, and you'll probably be feeling much better than stuffing your face with calorically dense foods and then feeling guilty because you're
Yeah.
likely to end up doing check-ins right after your show, which big, you know, disclaimer, and like I promote this a lot, you should not be dropping your coach after your show. Like
No.
I your competition prep is your prep, and then like 8 or plus weeks after your show, the prep is not over, and that's the
Yeah.
worst drop a coach. So
Yeah.
I can't encourage it enough. You need that accountability. Do you do that with your girls as well? Like
100%. Like we literally have it as a clause in contracts. Anyone that's doing comp prep, you have got a minimum 4 weeks post show commitment, and ideally we want people to commit for longer, simply from the perspective of we want to get you out of that hole. We want to get you up regulated, back to feeling good. Like we
yeah,
don't want to see people, and obviously not everyone will have a coach year round. That's fine, but
yeah,
before you know, fly away from the nest, we want you back to completely upregulated health hormones where we know your relationship with food and self is good, so that
yeah,
we can you go knowing you're going to be fine. And so that's going to take time. So yeah, you're right. You cannot drop a coach straight after show. You're not in the right state of mind. Your body is not in a healthy place. Like it's hard, even for the most experienced competitor, it is hard. So you need that person to give you structure, guidance, to be there when you have, you know, you're not going to be perfect.
no,
And I'll say I wasn't perfect in my reverse after this last show. Absolutely not. And those days I needed my coach so I could go to him and say like, hey, I wasn't perfect. Like, what do I
yeah,
do? I don't feel good about this. I feel bad. Just to have that person give you, you know, the little kind of support that you need, tell you it's okay, you're only human, and just get back on track. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't done any harm and all that sort of stuff. So it's so important.
one thing said to anybody listening, we're not perfect. We're competitors, we're pros, we're coaches, we're not perfect. Like coming after my show, yes, I was on cloud nine and it was full of joy, but I also was on an emotional roller coaster. And, you know, there were times where I came in, I was like, yes, I'm going to nail this reverse. And then it came to like 1 or 2 days where I felt like I lost a little bit of control. So know that, you know, nobody's perfect. And if someone's not talking about it, they're likely because they're also making those errors as well. And it's
Yeah.
just part of the process. And the way to minimize that is having that sense of accountability. And I think even if it's not a coach, having like a buddy system. I
Yeah.
always like, you know, the competitors to mingle amongst each other, whether they're on your team, whether they're other friends that are competitors, people you look up to. I tell everyone, like, if you're struggling, message me because I'm happy to talk with you about it because I go through the same thing. Because
Yeah.
at the maybe, you know, it could benefit you to be reassured. Like the other
Yeah.
day, Lauren sent me a lovely message about reverse dieting in the post show. And it just felt really good to know that somebody else is also in those shoes, even though you know that people are in them.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I want us to talk about is what do you do in those moments where you do slip up? Like, what
Mm.
is the first thing that you encourage your athletes to do when they do have those moments where they had that fuck it days and they had whatever they wanted and they caved in the emotions? How do you go about quote unquote fixing it or coming back from that so you're not going down a downward spiral?
Yeah, cool question. So like first thing is reflection upon it, right? So the only way we can kind of help to mitigate it becoming an ongoing thing is to reflect on what happened. So it's like, what was it about that day? What was it about that moment? Because, you know, humans have got so much willpower. We really do tap that out when we compete. And if we compete for a length of time or multiple shows, we really tap that out, right? So, you know, we need to make our life easier. So we need to reflect on what happened. Potentially it was we were in an environment that's not normal, right? So being out of our normal environment makes it more challenging. Potentially maybe a partner brought home some takeout or something that was out of the norm. You know, it's putting that thing that's hard in our face. Maybe we had a hard day at work and we were stressed and we were tired. Maybe we had a poor night's sleep. Whatever it is, all of the little things that can tap into that kind of like discipline, willpower mentality and make it even more challenging. Because there's usually a catalyst, right? There's something that led to it, right? So we want to tap into what that was. First, all right, what was it? How are we going to create an action plan around trying to avoid that happening again? So that's the first. Let's make sure we're not just band-aiding it. Let's make sure we're fixing it, right? As best as we can. Things will happen, you know, but we want to reflect, and it's what makes us, I suppose, better at this process in the future. Then go, okay, what's done is done. Who cares, right? We forget about it. It doesn't matter. We're not going to try and balance, this is our personal opinion, balance things after the show. Now, if we were in a cart coming into a show with someone over 8, we'd probably balance out their calorie average, make sure they're still in a deficit, all that sort of stuff, because we have a goal to hit. But now it's about health, right? And we're already downregulated. The worst thing I feel we can do is then say, right, we're going to drop your calories tomorrow, or we're going to give you more cardio to balance it out, because what's likely going to happen is that competitor is going to come to the end of that next day, they're starving, they're tired, it's going to happen again. And then what that creates is like this overeat, punish, restrict cycle. And so we don't want the cycle. So what we say is we just go, right, let's just get back to our usual. That's it. No extra cardio, don't drop your calories. And we look at where we were at. So if the competitor's like been in a place where they're just starving and they're really struggling with the calories they're on and they're potentially just that little bit too low, then we might actually even just give them a little extra bump up that following day and say, cool, let's stick to this new bump up. Makes it a bit easier. As you said, lots of volume foods, things to make you feel full. Let's help manage that hunger. Make sure we're spreading out our meals. You know, a good big drink of water before, you know, before you go to bed. Make sure you're nice and hydrated, get a good night's sleep, wake up the next day, and we just start fresh. No guilt, no feeling bad about it, no punishing, and we just move on. And
I think that also kind of goes into the topic of, you know, reverse dieting and recovery diets, where you know, some competitors, they're very ambitious to take it nice and slow and steady so they can maintain that conditioning. But it really just depends on the state that you are in, how much you're actually eating going in, and is that the best decision for you? Like, I'll use myself for an example. Ideally, I would have loved to do that, but it's not realistic. With the state that I'm going into the end of this show, I had to accept, you know what? I might see a rate of change that's a little bit higher than, you know, comfortable, but it's going to put position where I am more in control of my hunger and I'm not going into any binge and restricting cycles because I have a higher quantity of food, but also my energy for my training is going to be better. My sleep is going to be better. And I think the hardest part, I'm sure male competitors feel the same, but especially for women, and that's just because I predominantly work with women and myself, it's that, you know, you work so dang hard to get to that conditioning, that best physique ever, and then you see it slip away. Talk to me about how you navigate, you know, that feeling of slowly seeing yourself now go the opposite direction, and how you help your girls do the same. Or like if all competitors are on your team, what is that advice that you provide them? Because it isn't easy. It really isn't. It makes your head a lot.
And it never gets easier. I'll say that because I'm going through it right now, you know, going from what was stage condition where we're vascular, we're lean, we're like tiny, even just getting back to what is still considered lean to the general standard. But to us, I'm like, oh, I'm soft. Like, you know, oh my God, like it's really hard. So I suppose like one thing that really has helped me from that, and we do work with some males, but predominantly females as well, right? Males go through it, but I've noticed just from my experience, not to the same extent. And I think it's because they have this mentality, and this is what's helped, is that everything's temporary. Everything is temporary. We're always in a temporary state. So body composition, no matter what, is always temporary, and it's supposed to be cyclical, right? So body composition is actually supposed to change. If we think about nature and like the foods available to us throughout the changing seasons, like as winter comes, like we have more accessibility to like more starchy kind of foods and heavier foods, and we're supposed to get a bit softer for the cold to help us manage that. And then coming into the summer, we get the like lighter fruits and things that are in season, which help us to shed that fat and be a little bit lighter and leaner through summer, right? So the body's supposed to go through these changes. It's just obviously more modern day society that's created this image of like, reach your perfect body and stay there. We can't stay there. We're never gonna stay there, but we can develop a happy place with our body year round. So understanding it's gonna change helps. Understanding that like, just as I can get lean, if I get a little bit softer, I can easily lose it again. Like we're always gonna go through the ups and downs, right? So that's the first step, is just knowing it's not permanent. I'm not gonna stay here forever. It is temporary. And then we shift focus from the aesthetic onto how you're feeling, right? That's the really big important thing post-show. Because we look our best coming into show, we feel our worst. We feel awful.
100%.
It's awful. Yeah.
I always tell my girls, and especially because I coach in person too, and they always, you know, I coach Gen Pop in person, so when they see me get ready, they're like, you look amazing. And I'm like a zombie. My energy, my first few clients back, I'm like, let's go. And they're like, what did you do to Maria? Where is she? And I have energy, and I tell them every time, yes, body goals, but this stage physique is so temporary. It lasts me a week. That condition, I give myself a week and a half of that conditioning, and I feel my worst. I'm like, I tell them every time, I feel my best when I'm much, much thicker. And although I personally think it's, you know, I love that physique for myself as well. It's just that general assumption that the leaner you are, the healthier you are. And especially if you're a competitor that's been pushing preps, it's not the healthiest. If anything, it's probably in a position where you're pushing it with some of the boundaries with your health and wellness, even mentally, not just physically and internally as well. So that's a really important point that, you know, for anybody who's interested in competing, yes, body goals, but it's not sustainable. And we don't encourage it either.
No, we don't. We say get in and get out. And you're right. Like I often find like once I've gotten through what is the initial challenging period post show of seeing the body shift, which is always hard. I always remember like I feel my best and love my body when it's thicker. Like I've got some curves, I've got some fat on it, I feel like a woman, you know, like that's where I feel much happier. I don't necessarily love my lean body. It's great seeing all the veins and that, but I'm a stick, you know? I'm like, oh my God, I'm a little boy. Like it's completely different. And so I don't feel like, you know, I don't feel sexy either. So it's just like into that healthier body is nicer from a health perspective, mental, physical. And once we can get back to that and embrace it, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I feel amazing here. I love how I look here. So it's just navigating that initial post-show period and being able to say like, you're going to get back to a happy place. You're going to feel amazing. You know, you love it. It's only a temporary state anyway. Like, you know, if you want to get then you can, but you know, you hate it because you feel awful. So yeah.
I think a good practice, and I've implemented it myself and I've seen my girls implement it successfully, is you're going to have those days when you're a little bit thicker and like, you know, softer or fluffy, whatever you're calling it, right? You know, I think focusing, like you said, on performance instead of how you're looking physically, but also remind dress comfortable. Like if you're feeling maybe this comfy, you know, crop tops and shorts, you know, you're more than I like wearing baggy shirts if I'm feeling uncomfortable, those bad body image days, but I still show up. And I'm like, you know, not looking at the mirror, not going to take pictures. Like I'm just here to perform because I know that the work I'm putting in now is going to be what I'm showing on stage. And that's what I want to talk about next. It's the importance of staying in that surplus or building season or maintenance for a successful continuing competition. And so talk to me a little bit about how you set your clients up for success. Like, for example, end of 2022 season, we're here with the WBFF. 2023 is going to kick off very soon. And beginning or at the end, you're technically kind of on prep year round, right? Whether in off season or in season. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how do you go about, you know, diving into another prep or optimizing that off season so you're ready to dive into prep?
Yeah, I love that. You're right. Like you're never off.
No.
There's no off season. So I hate on and off season. We don't say it with our girls because we feel language is so important. It's progress season or
Yep.
like on like the cut. Basically, that's it. Like you're either progressing or you're cutting. And that's even if you're not going to compete for like 5 years, even if you're going to go away, have kids and come back, you're still progressing in life, in training, everything, right? So as soon as the show's done, the year's done, you're right, like next year's coming up, the dates are going to be announced soon. So we sit down and we create what is the game plan and what we think is really important with clients, especially those who aren't coaches themselves, is really laying out that visual plan, because people do not realize, I suppose, in bodybuilding years, time is shorter. So you're not going to progress as much as you think in the time you have. If you say you're going to give yourself a year between shows, a year sounds like a really long time. Take away a month to 2 months for recovery. Take away what is, we say, 4 to 5 months to cut. You've got less than 6 months to build. And as we know, we're not going to build a lot, especially as females, in 6 months. You're not going to make a lot of change. You're going to get back on stage with a physique that's very similar to what you last presented. And the aim of the game is constant progression on stage. We need to level up. We need to refine our physique, or whatever it is, whether it's with condition, muscle, shape, along with in WBFF, the rest of the judging, which is, you know, our look, all of that. So we need time to do it. So we look at what the client needs to do. We sit down and talk to them about, what are your strengths? What did you do really well? What are the weaknesses? Because everyone's got them, even the world champs. We've got things we can improve always. There's always something to be improved. So what do we need to improve? How long is it going to take to improve that thing? And then we look at the calendar ahead and we say, right, if you've got a lot of muscle to build and we need a lot of time, we're not doing a show to at least the back end of the season, if not the year after. You know, you've got to give yourself that time. If it's small improvements, we might be able to compete a little bit sooner. So we create a real clear plan around what needs to be improved from a physical perspective, and that's your training. That's the gym, right? So that's one thing to focus on in the off season. And that helps from that perspective of focusing on performance, because it's like every single session you're doing makes a difference. If you break down, like if you're competing within the space of a year and you train legs twice a week and you actually break it down to how many leg sessions you have, that's nothing. Yeah.
It's so funny. I do that. I got off. I'm the type of competitor, and it's just the athlete in me. A day after show, I texted my coach and I said, "So, what are we doing next? Like, give me for,
Yeah.
for 35
Yes.
weeks,
Yes,
30
yes.
worlds." But you just break it down, and I think as athletes, even if you're competing in the next year, I love that, and that you do that as well, laying it out for yourself and breaking it down in numbers so you can see how many weeks do you have in your improvement season and in prep, right? So you know the progress is going to happen in that short amount of time. 35 weeks sounds like a lot, but if I'm realistically only have 16, maybe less, to actually be in a non-prep mode, depending on how long prep is, it's not a lot of time. And that, what you just said, how many leg sessions, how many upper sessions, that's going to allow you as an athlete to go in on those days where you're like, I have a lot of time, to be like, wait a second, each workout is going to bring that 1% improvement that you are expecting to see on stage, or the judges are expecting to see. And that also goes into nutrition as well. I was talking with my coach about this, and I think that it's really easy when you know your show is so far, or if you're not prepping yet, to not really be like, I have time, I can eat a little extra or not follow, but you don't at the end of the day, right? So it's like, if you're truly driven to improve and be the best athlete that you can be, even now being this far out, each meal counts, right? And don't get me wrong, you're gonna have flexibility, you're gonna have the fun times, you're gonna, you know, it depends on when your show is, you can allow yourself that flexibility, but you got to be real with yourself, right? If you set a standard, you never want to really fall below what you set. Last time you stepped stage better have been your absolute best. You got to bring a little better, right? So that require even more precision with your approach. And I think that people underestimate that it starts now, even if your show starts right now. And that's why we about it that way.
Yeah, well, we don't like that off-season mentality for that reason, because people finish their show and they're like, cool, I'm off. And they, you know, they don't train as hard, they don't commit as much, they start eating out more, they go out drinking a lot more, they socialize, like they still train, and, you know, they're like, yeah, look, now I'm building, I'm bulking, right? So I can eat what I want, I can get as thick as I want, I can do what I want, and then it comes time to cut, and they're like, right, now I'm back on. But the reality is they haven't been sleeping, they've probably been stressed, they've probably been drinking alcohol, which is obviously going to have a big impact on recovery and results. They haven't been optimizing food and nutrition. So really, they've gotten a lot softer than potentially they needed to.
Yeah.
They've put a lot of muscle on, but they cut down and realized they haven't actually put on anything. They just put on more fat than they needed to, which means their next cut is also more challenging than it has to be. So the time in between that progress season, that's where the win is built. Yes. Not the cut. The cut is just we're trimming things down. Like the work is done. We're like, if you come to us with a mentality of like, right, I'm ready to switch on because I'm cutting, we're like, you've already lost the game.
Yeah.
Like you're on during your progress season to build the champion physique, the champion mentality, the champion habits, lifestyle, presentation, right? So you need to be making the most of it. And part of that is, like you say, balance, because a healthy, functioning human is balance. Connection over food, being able to enjoy ourselves, have a date night with our partner, like that is part of health. So it's important. But it's knowing the repercussions, and this is what we say to our clients, the repercussions of every decision you make. If you're going to go out, you're going to have a big night out, you're going to get off your face, do what you want to do, you know. But your whole next 2 days, you're then impacted. You can't train properly and you're not recovering. You've now lost 3 days because you're also not recovering that day. So you've just decided to give up 3 days of that progress season. It's not a good or bad thing necessarily. It's your choice. But be aware and do that every week. Almost half of every week you've lost. So you've just cut your progress season pretty much in half. Yeah. So if it's short already, you've lost a lot of time. So we also use, like you say, numbers during that progress season as well with our clients. Like we give them guesstimates around things like weight, body comp, and stuff like that. So we say, like, look, if this is kind of like the max sort of weight we approximately want to get to, scales don't matter, numbers don't matter. I need to emphasize that, but it gives us a sort of range. It's like you decide to chuck on an extra like 10 pounds with life, great, enjoy your life. But now we're either going to have to mini cut because you're a little bit too far from the goal. So that time you're mini cutting, you're not progressing. Yeah. Or you have to start that cut much sooner, which means you've potentially just pushed your competing season back 3, 6, 12 months. Yeah. So you need to know the repercussions of every decision you make in that progress season. The reality is, like, if you're a competitor, you're a competitor year round. Yeah. You've got to be able to accept the responsibility of that. Yeah.
Responsibility is the big word that lots of, you know, especially amateurs tend to feel afraid to accept. And I think that that champion mentality is truly accepting that you have to really like and love, if not like, you need to love the work to be a champion more than just the thought of being one, because you won't always get the outcome you want. You won't always win. You might place. You might feel like you're putting in so much work and it's not going, you know, going unnoticed, but you have to keep showing up and keep putting in that work, because that is truly, and this is what I live by the entire season. The only way you will lose is if you give and fail. That's the only way. It's by giving up. And if you continue to take that responsibility starting now, you're going to see yourself progress much further. That no placing can compare to that feeling of developing that mindset as an athlete. And it's not about being on meal prep 365. No, that's not what we're saying as coaches or as competitors. We don't do that. It's truly about accepting that responsibility. And let me know how you feel about this. I think the one thing that's my secret to the utmost confidence on show day is this: off season and in season, or improvement season and on prep. If you are giving your utmost effort every single day and you've done everything in your ability, that is how you're going to be the utmost confident on stage, because you've left nothing on the table and it's not in your hands anymore. If you cheat yourself from effort, workouts, meals, of course you're going to feel a little self-conscious on stage, maybe feeling like you could have done better or you're not the best that you could be because you truly didn't commit to giving your best. But if you are giving your best, nobody can take that from you because you've done everything, right? Yeah. And with a subjective sport like competing on a physique show and like WBFF, that's out of your control. And you might be the absolute best you've ever looked, but somebody that day could have been just a little bit better. That's why I love using that on the days where I'm like, I don't want to do shit. I'm like, wait. Stage day Maria needs me to do this because she needs to be her absolute best. So you pick the feet, you get to the gym, you eat the meals in your improvement season and in season. That's my secret. I think live by that, you're successful always.
Yeah, you're so right. Like, getting on stage, it's an identity, right? And for a lot of people, they want to, they want to do well, they want to win, they want to go pro, they want to be the crown winner, they want to be the world champion. You don't earn that title on the day. You earn that title and that identity in the months and years prior. And you're right, like by doing the actions and keeping up the behaviors, that's what creates that person. So it's like, I've been on all year, I've been working my butt off, I have worked for this. So when you get on that stage, you're like, I want to show this off. Like, this is what I do, what I've worked for. Like, I want to be able to show this off on the stage, rather than, like you say, getting to show day and just thinking about all the little things that could have been done better. That's not conducive to confidence, and that's not going to bring that fire on the day. That's just going to make you feel bad. So you're right. We need to, and this is why we say often to our clients, like, discipline is self-love. We need to apply discipline to look after our future self. Like, if you want your future self to feel really good on the day, look after her. Do the things now.
Exactly. And I think, honestly, we could honestly talk for hours on this, because we've been through it and we felt those emotions. We've seen our girls do it. But what would you say are maybe like your top 3 takeaways for anybody that, probably just got off stage or has felt these feelings before, to prepare for the next time they get off stage? What would you say are your top 3 pieces of advice to provide for any competitor out there who is dealing with these feelings? Again, whether you win first, not place at all, everybody goes through this. And I'm here to say that I felt it all through all of them. It's just,
Yeah, you've been through all of this year. Congratulations, by the way. Yeah, congratulations. It's paid for your hard work. Yeah, like, first piece of advice is most important. Don't suffer in silence. Reach out, because everyone's going through a challenging time. Everyone has a tough day. Don't be afraid to share that with your partner, your loved ones, your coach, your buddy, whoever it is you've got. Tell people what you're experiencing, because it really does help to have someone know that you're not just kind of suffering there by yourself and feeling bad and kind of beating yourself up. So be open in your communication, be open and honest, and be vulnerable. There's nothing wrong with being vulnerable post-show. So that's the biggest piece of advice. It really, really helps. Remind yourself that we're all only human. Okay, so we're not gonna be perfect, but also don't be afraid to call yourself out on your own bullshit. Yes. So know when to be kind, and know when you're just making excuses, right? And we all know. We know when we're having a tough day and things are out of our control. That's the important variable, out of our control. There's no point beating ourselves up. But if they're in our control and we're just making a decision based off of like laziness or how we're feeling on the day, we know that we can get the work done. So understand the differences between that and have a plan. Always have a plan. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. Do not go into it blind. Have that structure, have that routine, have the next goal. Even if that goal is not a show, you don't have to always have a show in mind. But make sure after the show, you've got the next thing you're focusing on, whether it's performance goals, whether it's health, whether it's your business, whether it's relationships with family. Like, have something to focus on, because the thing about prep, it gives us that daily purpose. When we don't have that, that's where we can really fall into those kind of like post-comp depressions and like post-comp blues. So have that thing to give you focus and purpose every day.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, my biggest takeaway would be really sit with your emotions and reflect on them, whether you're talking with someone or writing it in a journal, whatever way you can truly express your emotions. Because if you're trying to bottle it up and say you're fine and you're not, it's going to end up biting you in the butt. And just at the end of the day, there can only be one person that wins that day. Don't beat yourself up if you didn't get the placing that you wanted. It has nothing to do with your work as an athlete, as a human. It's not that you aren't worthy of it or that you're not the best. It just simply is how the cards were played that day. And I know the feeling of defeat, and I know it, especially if you're super competitive.
Yeah.
Me, I am.
It's hard.
It's just simply about going back and saying, what can I do better? Because if you're looking at it with the perspective of, this just means that there's room for growth, you see it in a more positive light. And it's like, oh yeah, like, if this means I have more work to do, I have more work to do. And I didn't always feel that way at the beginning, but the more you practice saying that to yourself of, okay, this simply means there's somewhere I can improve. Let's figure it out and let's try it again next time. Because at the end of the day, if you're really passionate about competing, you're going to have to accept that. You can't win every single show. Maybe you can if you're lucky. Go for it, right? Good for you. But not everyone can do that. So be kind to yourself, reflect on that, and love the work. Just love the work. You need to love the work of being a competitor, because if you don't, then there's no reason for you to compete, because you're going to be in this, you're going to be in the difficult portion of prep and improvement season for the most part. So you really just have to love it enough to stick it through. And if you find that you're not happy, don't do it anymore. No one's forced, you know?
You don't have to compete. You don't have to. But if you're gonna, you get to progress. You get to level up. It's a blessing to be able to be in a position, and it's a luxury to be able to be in a position to diet, to level up our body, our mind, and have the time capacity, physical health capacity to do it. So be grateful for the opportunity, I say.
Privilege, right? So thank you so much for joining us today. Before I let you go, to anybody that's watching, Lauren and I will be going to a lot of live events coming in 2023. So if you like learning from us, make sure you head over to the Clean Health page, our event page, to check out where we're going to be headed. Lauren and I will be traveling to these live events, and we're super excited to bring those back, because just as much as competing is a passion, so is education. So being able to empower you guys with the tools needed, whether you're a competitor, whether you have your own personal goals that have nothing to do with competing, we're here to provide that help and guidance for you. So make sure you check that out. And again, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. Gosh, I needed this conversation more than anything, and I'm so happy we were able to have it together. And we will catch up again soon. If you guys have any questions for us when this is posted, you can comment, and Lauren and I can always answer in the comments if we didn't answer something during the live. But again, Lauren, thank you so much for your time and our conversation today. And I cannot wait to see the success for you and your team in the 2023 season. I cannot wait.
Bring it on. I'll see you next year.
Bye.